Good morning, I'm WaywornWyrm, and welcome to my channel. And welcome to episode 3 of Curse the Darkness, The Journey to Vorberg. Maximilian briefly left the group, and a couple of minutes later he came out again, this time with a man in tow. The man was big, both tall and muscular, with hair that was closer to stubble than hair, and a large handlebar mustache. A few scars were visible, but not enough to make him look deformed or hideous. As soon as he came out, Toastig laughed and jumped up, heading over to the man. Andre Kessler! You old dog, you. How are you doing? I heard Maximilian had a chief bodyguard who had worked in the old company, but I didn't know it was you. Andre cracked a large grin at seeing Toastig, and the two men embraced before letting go. It's good to see you, old friend. I'm doing quite well, thank you. Maximilian looked at the two sidelong. I see you know each other, and introductions are not in order as I had thought they were. Toasted looked at Maximilian, his smile still plastered on his face. Andre and I go way back. We were still teenagers when we first met. Killed our first men together, we did. Lived the life of mercenaries for quite a while before the company broke up, and we all went our separate ways. Maximilian nodded impatiently at this. It was abundantly clear that he didn't care. Good. Let's go then. Please pack up whatever you intend to take with you, and meet me by the coach in an hour's time. We have a full day's trip ahead of us. I would like to make it home before it gets too dark. After packing, the group found their way to the coach that had been hired to bring Maximilian, his wife Helena, and her childhood friend Barbara to Vorberg. Andre and 3 hand-picked men were on horses that were impatient to get a move on. The coach looked as old as it could be and creaked with every movement of the horses that were pulling it. And perched on top of the coach was a man who looked as old and as creaky as the coach did. Attached to the back of the coach was a small cart that was loaded up with the gifts and other things that you collect at a wedding. Amoff looked up at Andre. I can see there are 2 open seats next to the wonderful coachman. May I ask, how many seats are free inside the coach? There are 2 seats. One of you will have to sit in the cart with the gifts. Amoff nodded. Rosamunde, would you be so kind as to join me in the coach? She acquiesced very easily, and Wilhelm announced he and his dog would sit in the cart. The 3 passengers joined Amoff and Rosamunde in the cart just as everyone finished settling in, and with a snap of his reins, the cart was off with a creak, and they soon left Swansea behind them. The group stopped very rarely, only a couple breaks for relieving oneself and a stop for lunch. Andre drove the party forward hard. He very clearly wanted to reach Vorberg before nightfall, and the thought of being out after dark clearly weighed on his mind throughout the trip. However, that did not stop him from talking with Wilhelm at length. What brings you out this way, Wilhelm? Andre asked. Wilhelm shrugged. I've been a rat catcher for years. I'm fairly good with my maul here, and when Amoff was first looking for a small expedition into this area to search the ruins for something interesting, he found me in a small bar and offered me an equal share in whatever we find. The city I was in was starting to see a lot of competition among the rat catchers, so I decided to leave. How long have you been working for Maximilian? Oh, not too long. After the company Toastig and I were part of broke up, I went around from town to town looking for work in the line of business I was good at. Eventually, I found my way out this way, and Maximilian hired me for a large sum of money to do work that has very little danger to it. And between you and I, that sounds more appealing each year. Is he a good boss? Andre shrugged. He's a fair boss. and the wages are good. I'm generally not fond of the wheeler-dealer types, and Maximilian spends all of his time trying to figure out how to secure the next deal to improve his station. On top of the coach, Rado and Toasted quickly found their companion to be quite silent and glum. And the three sellswords that Andre had brought along as guards didn't speak more than the bare minimum of the local language that they would need to get by, and were not good talking companions. The two of them fell into talking with each other for the 1000th time, with frequent long breaks of silence. Inside the coach, things were quite different. The coach had pretty well divided into two groups, the women and the men. Amoff still hadn't managed to shake Maximilian, though he had tried. Maximilian spent most of the morning regaling everyone inside with stories of how he had built his business from nothing, and all the various things he had done to help his village over the years. He doted on his wife, but, again, it seemed as though he did this because that was the role expected for him to play, rather than out of genuine concern or even affection for her. Eventually, shortly before lunch, Amoff was able to get more than a word or two in edgewise. Shouldn't the bride token have made it to Swansea by now? Or shouldn't we have passed it? They would have taken this road, right? It's not that difficult of a stretch of road, is it? Yes, those are all correct. It does worry me that it has not reached Swansea yet. I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't have. But never fear, my bailiff, Heinrich Truman, will have some good reason why it's not left Vorberg yet, and we'll settle it tonight when we reach Vorberg and ask him about it. Maximilian beamed at the rest of the occupants of the coach as he finished. But Amoff was unconvinced. He was sure Maximilian was more worried than he was letting on, but he couldn't place why. Unless the road wasn't as safe as Maximilian was playing it off as. Why have you waited so long, cousin, to marry? Amoff asked slightly later. Maximilian frowned at the question, and an air of sadness briefly came over him. This is not my first marriage. It is my second. I was once married to a woman, and I have both a son and a daughter. Tragically, my wife and daughter were killed many years ago. My grown son wants nothing to do with my business. I wish he were more grateful to me for raising him for so long and providing him with the ability to go play in the woods all day as he does, and be more grateful for the company that provides our lifestyle. But what can I do? Waldman is a grown man, and he has to make his own choices. It's not a father's place to push after a certain point. When the group stopped for lunch, the three groups stayed separate. Rosamunde was finally able to get Helena and Bibi, which was the name Barbara went by, to open up to her. It became really clear that Helena was putting on a brave face in a situation she had no control over, and Bibi was just trying to be supportive. I hope I have a son, Helena said out of the blue. Rosamunde looked up at this and set her trencher down. Yeah? Why is that? It's what Maximilian and Father want. It's what will make them happy. That's not the best reason. Such is life. Andre and Wilhelm were continuing their talk nearby as Rosamunde was having her breakthrough. What do you think of the other men who work for Maximilian? Andre looked around for a second to make sure no one was listening before answering. I don't like Heinrich Truman. I understand being harsh to those who work under you, especially when they aren't working that well, But there's a line you should never cross. Heinrich is on the wrong side of that line far too often for far too small of reason. But it gets even worse. Heinrich has a young son, a nice young boy by the name of Dieter. Dieter is a good kid, all of about 9 years old, almost 10. He sort of reminds me of me when I was young. He yearns for excitement and adventure, as all boys do. One day, the kid is messing around, just being a young boy. Got a stick in his hand and he's pretending to fence an imaginary foe, going back and forth, sometimes on a low wall, sometimes just around the yard. Well, he's going along and makes a big sweep with his stick, and as he had pulled it back, he had caught the rope used to keep a bundle of hemp together. As he swung forward, he pulled the rope loose, and the whole bundle came apart. It looks like a huge mess, but honestly, it would take a person maybe 5 minutes to put it back together. Heinrich sees this happen, and not half an hour later, I see him tanning that boy's hide until the stick snaps from overuse. Not only did that kid not sit right for almost 2 weeks, but almost a week after it happened, Dieter was walking around with a white tunic on, and he stretched out and up to reach for something, and I saw blood start to collect on his shirt. Can you imagine that? A week after the beating, his wounds are still healing at the point where he can accidentally crack the scabs open and cause them to bleed on the slightest provocation. He shook his head at this and lapsed into silence shortly thereafter. After lunch, the path turned into rolling hills and forests. They became thicker and thicker, rather than the rather open, lightly wooded area it had been. As the afternoon rolls on and turns to late afternoon, Andre and Wilhelm make several trips forward to scout ahead and make sure the path is clear. And then one time they come back visibly shaken. Andre stops the coach and starts talking with his guards in a hushed tone. Maximilian eventually stuck his head out of the window. "What in blazes is going on, Andre? Why have we stopped?" Andre looks up at his boss for a minute before finally speaking. There's a blockage ahead, sir. I need to take our new guests forward with me. We'll work on clearing everything up and making sure that we can continue forward as soon as possible. Don't worry, there's no danger, and I will be keeping the guards around here just in case. Maximilian stuck his head back in and put out a dismissive wave to Andre as Amoff and Rosamunde left the coach. Thank you so much for listening to the 3rd episode of Curse the Darkness. Make sure to tune in again on March 18th for episode 4, where we find out what's just ahead on the road. And make sure you tune in tomorrow for a pre-recorded session of Morrowind. As I have mentioned, I will not be at my computer for tomorrow, so I will not be able to live stream. But thank you.